Hello. This is, why is this also? It's very, very yellow. My view today is all yellow. I wonder why. Okay, it's looking very yellow on the screen also. So this is, anyway, this is the New Year's Live. I'm going to set the frame for the whole next year for you with this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to dismantle a whole bunch of things about spirituality and how the understanding, the prevailing understanding, the prevailing collective idea of spirituality is, you know, creating a barrier between you and money. And then I'm going to weave it together so that you really see that spirituality and money is actually two sides of the same coin. Because what the Millionaire Mystics is really about is like bringing, you know, like helping mystics become millionaires, right? So first of all, I want to start with, what do I mean by the word mystic? So mystic to me is somebody who sees beyond the obvious, right? In any way, shape, or form. So these are the healers, they're the spiritual entrepreneurs, they're spiritual business owners, they're the witches, the wise women, the health coaches, the shamans, the medicine women, the sound healers. I would see it's therapists, psychics. Pretty much anybody can be a mystic, because it's like how you look at life, right? It's like how you look at life. Is there more between heaven and earth? Is there a spiritual reality that matters as much as a material reality? Is there an energetic reality that matters as much, or, as we know, more than the material reality? Then you're a mystic. And there's a real reason why I'm using the word mystic, because mysticism is different from spirituality. So I may or may not go into this here, but anyway, so I want to start with, you know, first dismantling the, you know, like dismantling what we understand by spirituality. So if you think about what is spirituality, right? Just like where does this all come from? It's like the Enlightenment. The whole idea is about God. It's like all our spiritual teachings, they are old. I mean, they're really, really, really old. I mean, you think about Christianity, it's like Jesus was like 2,000 years ago, you know, and it's funny, you know, we're here celebrating the birth of Jesus. You know, he lived 2,000 years ago. And I want you to really, really, really think about this, because, you know, it's like, because this is about spirituality and money. And like 2,000 years ago, 99.9999999% of the people on the planet, they lived on they had a subsistence level existence. It was very much about just subsisting. And it wasn't, you know, until like, you know, just 100 years ago that kind of changed, right? So it's no wonder that the whole thing about being poor, you know, has been such a prevailing part of the religions, you know, which is, you know, I mean, even what you think about spirituality, you know, the religions, but poverty, you know, poverty to the point where it was subsistence level. Farming, it's like where it all became about, do I have enough to eat? Do I have a place to stay? Do I have clothes to keep me dry? You know, these are the three things, you know, it's like really just about surviving and keeping yourself alive from day to day to day. So the spiritual teachings at that level, they had to address that most of the people that they encountered, they were poor, right? I mean, you think about Jesus was poor, Buddha was poor, you know, all the Indian saints were poor, you know, all the holy people were poor. I don't know about Confucius, you know, I'm not a master of this, but most of the spiritual teachers, like those spiritual teachers who left a legacy that people are still valuing, they were poor, right? So right there, because the teaching says that you have to be like your spiritual teacher, so you better be poor too. So let's just look at Christianity, right? It's like I already mentioned that, Happy New Year, Monique, that Jesus was poor, you know, and Jesus has for 2,000 years, you know, he has been held up like this person we all have to become like. I have something to say about this, but in a while, so hang on, because it's not quite what we are supposed to do. If you think about the Bible, you know, I was raised Christian, but really not Christian. It's like the Danish national religion, but I don't really know. I never read the Bible. But there's a few things, right? It's like the story about the camel and the eye of the needle, which somehow has been come to mean that rich people can't get into heaven, right? This is like rich people, they can't get salvation. Rich people are going to suffer in hell, which, you know, instantly becomes money is the root of all evil, when, you know, it's not money in itself because it's neutral. Money has no power to create evil. You know, it's like what do you do with the money? Why do you have the money? You know, where's it coming from? And then, you know, that also became, you know, because you have to think again, it's like 2,000 years ago where Christianity started, everybody was poor. So the poor were the blessed people, right? It's like they had to bring about that poverty was not a bad thing, you know, because back then that was the way of life. And then I started thinking, okay, it's like we all, yeah, you know, we already know this, right? This is not new, but there's still, you know, because our ancestral inheritance, whatever, you know, it's still sitting there in us that it's not spiritual to have a lot of money. It's not spiritual to be rich. But then when you think about like the Catholic Church, because once I moved to Italy here, it's like the Catholic Church kind of got in my face. And the Catholic Church is like one of the richest corporations on this planet. I mean, they have billions and billions and billions. The wealth of the Catholic Church, which preaches poverty is your salvation, how you get into heaven. It's you know, and, you know, the same with the Franciscans, the order of the Franciscans, you know, St. Francis of Assisi, somebody that, you know, have a very special connection to, in terms of, there's a lot of power places, there's a lot of sacred energies, like mystical earth, a sacred site where a lot of mystical experiences have been very powerful mystical experiences. This is the richest monastical order in the Catholic Church. And you know, it's like, you know, so there's a level there where the whole concept of it's better to be poor than rich, you know, for your spirituality's sake, it's like it just falls apart. And even if you're just going to look at the Eastern religions, I know most about the Indian saints. I was initiated into an Eastern spiritual path. This goes back like 1,000 years or whatever. But the saints, the spiritual teachers at that time, they were poor too, right? They were poor too, because everybody was poor except the people in power who accumulated wealth, like the rulers of the country and the, you know, the conquerors or whatever. So there wasn't much to be seen about how it's good to be rich. So all these spiritual teachings that, you know, going back in the time of history, it's all about how being poor is okay. And it became somehow perverted that you should be poor in order to get, you know, salvation. So another part of it, and yeah, it's, I mean, Dalai Lama is like one famous figurehead of an Eastern religion, right? And I always thought, you know, he's poor, he only has his rope, da 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 da. But he gets like $250,000 for a speech, like $250,000, or it might not be $250,000, but it's like the highest amount of money I have ever come across anybody getting for a presentation. That's the Dalai Lama. It's like an insane amount of money. So if, you know, the blessing was in the poverty, shouldn't he like just give it for free? You know, all expenses paid maybe, but give it for free. So I just want you to, it's like what I'm really here is like I'm like breaking this idea that we have that the most spiritual people that we know in any religions, in any spiritual path, they are not rich, they don't have the money. They might choose not to spend the money on themselves, but they certainly like bring in the money. And, you know, like the Catholic Church with the Vatican and whatever, it's like insane amount of money they have. Then there's the last part of it here, which I think also really matters, is that the spirituality can only be found in seclusion, you know, like the hermit in the cave, the witch in the hut deep in the forest, the nuns and the monks in the monasteries. It's like seclusion, right? They have been moving themselves for the world. And that might have been true, you know, at some point, but it's kind of like a false spirituality because it crumbles when, hi, Elda, Happy New Year's. That spirituality that's gained in, you know, in seclusion, it is a very fragile spirituality because it can't, very often it can't, you know, withstand the meeting with the rest of the world. I mean, this is why we have all these stories of all these spiritual people that were brought from, you know, the India over to the US in the 70s. And then when they just went insane, they, you know, all these monks, they didn't know about how to be around women who wore hot pants or whatever. So one last thing about these ancient spiritual traditions, because you really, really, really have to begin to see how absolutely distorted and flawed they are. What they all have in common, oh, here's another story, right? The Buddha, he was born rich and he forsook all his riches, all his material wealth to, you know, gain spiritual enlightenment. So, but what they all have in common is that the external source of power. It's like pretty much all of them say, yes, there is a God, and whoever is the most spiritual enlightened person has more power over you, knows more, knows what's better for you, can tell you what to do. So it's like transferring power from you over to an authority figure, right? A spiritual authority figure. And the last one is like, it's all in God's hands. You know, it is, but it isn't, right? Because the way it has been brought through the ages, whatever the original teachings were, it's like something outside of you has more power over you than you do. And I think that's probably the deepest flaw in all of this, because talk about disempowering people, right? Something else outside of you has more power over you than you do. And this is something that we all fall into. I mean, it is so deep in the human psyche that something else has more power over than you do, even when it comes to money. So the point about these old spiritual teachings, right? It's like, they're old. Why do we keep holding on to something that is so old, that was geared toward a world that was so very, very different? I mean, it's like look at this, like people were just living on a subsistence level. They were just focused on surviving, right? They had basically no education. You know, it's like compare the world of today. compared to yeah, or the universe, Monique, and compare it with life like 2000 years ago, right? It's like people knew shit. Whereas you come to this, it's like we know about empowerment, and we know this, and we know this, and we know this, and we know this. And in this day and age, we have a lot more autonomy and agency over our own lives in a way that has never, ever, 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 ever existed in the history of mankind before. It's like we have choices available that has never existed before. We don't need to focus on just surviving, it's like we're far beyond that. But our spiritual entrainment or our spiritual trance is so deep in us, right? So, and I don't get, it's like, why is something better? Why is the spiritual teaching better just because it's old? It's like, I don't get that. So yes, it's old. And this goes also, there's this whole fashion trend of, it's very fashionable to travel and learn from the shaman in South America, for example, with their ancient traditions. But why is it better just because it's old? Right? It's like there is this blindness to it, like almost like a blindness that because it's old and it has been around for a long time, it has a very compelling narrative. Because all these old spiritualities, or spiritual traditions, they have narratives, they have stories around it, they have myth. And it's like these stories and these myths, which always is like probably a version of the hero's journey, which is kind of what we all really want to do. This is what life is about. It's about the hero's journey, and then leaving the hero's journey behind and moving into the dark, where there are no heroes, there are only monsters, where we become monsters, but that's a different story. So also it's like, so people today, the world is just different. So why do we hold on to the old narrative? Why do we follow old teachings? Why do we follow old traditions? And in my own search for a spiritual teaching, it's like, there's always been, I don't care about what people did like 100 years ago. It's like, or 1,000 years ago. I don't care, right? I don't care what the Egyptian mythology was and the spiritual teaching in old Egypt. I don't care. I want something that fits my day and age. I want something that makes sense to my life. I don't care what Thoth or Isis or whatever these gods did. Or, another one is, just Christianity, right? It's like, I don't give a shit about Jesus. He lived like 2,000 years ago. It's like, how is that going to help me now? The world is different. The world is different. Like human consciousness is different. And the consciousness at that time, which is what all spiritual teachings was geared towards, this is like this is just so out there. I have a thing about this. So just because it's old and it has some compelling stories about it, and can teach, can show you the way to salvation. Okay, anyway, so all of you know here that we're heading into the dark consciousness. The light grid stat, the old spiritual ideals that were prevalent in the light grid, they are crumbling. And I'm here doing my part to crumble them. So now we have all this out of the way. I want to ask you a very important question. What does it mean to be spiritual? That's a very, very important question. What does it mean to be spiritual? The simplest answer possible. So while you're thinking about this, I'm going to give you my answers. Be in your own power, definitely part of it. Why is that spiritual? Why is it spiritual to be in your own power? So I have two answers, right? When I ask this, when I ask myself this question, in preparation for this live stream here, what does it mean to be spiritual? And I have two answers which are kind of the same, right? It's like, one is to live my life Godwards. You can go forwards, backwards. I came up with the word Godwards, live toward God's, meaning that your side is, Godwards. And the other part is, what does it mean to be spiritual? It means to be like God, right? Isn't that what all spiritual teachings is about? Is to be like God, which is very different from be like Jesus, or be like Buddha, or be like Muhammad. You see that? Very different, and Christianity has become like, be like Jesus, or be like, the Pope or whatever. But spirituality is to be like God. So let's take a look at God. Because if we are going to be spiritual, we have to figure out how to be like God. So God, I'm sure you will agree with me, God is the ultimate source of love, and God is the ultimate source of truth. So this is an equation I came up with like years ago, God equals love equals truth. When I was working, helping people with relationship, that if they wanted more love in their life, they needed to have more truth in their life. If they wanted more God in their life, if they wanted to live more Godwards, wanted to be more spiritual, they needed to have more truth in their life. And with that, once you get that God is truth, God is the ultimate truth, then you can really, really begin to look at what the hell is going on with the whole spirituality and money. So, is it true that you're powerless to make money? Is it true that you can't take responsibility for your life? Is it true that you don't know how to create sales? Is it true that you have low self-esteem? Is it true that, you're powerless? Is it true that, you don't know what to say? It's like all these things that we believe is true that turns out to be lies. So one of the things that I used to work with is codependence, right? So codependence is like over-focusing on somebody else to avoid focusing on you, right? It's like rescuing others from their misery. And if you think about it, it's like how much of current spirituality is about rescuing others. It's like in that rescuing, needing to rescue something, thinking that it's spiritual to rescue others, you imply that they don't have the power to figure out their life on their own. Meaning you reinforce the victim consciousness, which is, I'm helpless to change my life. I don't have the power to change my life. I need somebody to do it for me because I can't do it myself. And this is where we go into the faux or the false spirituality, because all of this is lie, right? This is all lies. We are really, really, really powerful being. We better have to be powerful being if we are supposed to be like God, the saying, we are not human beings on a spiritual journey. We are spiritual being on a human journey. But people are still stuck in the first one, right? They think they're human beings with all the restrictions and limitations of what it means to be a human being, who are like struggling on a spiritual path, rather than realizing it's the second part that's true, which you might understand. You might mentally understand the concept of it, but are you actually living it as a spiritual being, meaning a being made of God matter that is just happened to live in a human body, like wear a skin suit. So the whole thing about this spirituality that's hanging around in the world today is like the glorification of the victim consciousness, right? You got to be understanding with other people's pain. You got to rescue people, you know, you got to work with them endlessly to heal their traumas. I mean, I remember I had a client, she was in her 60s, and she came on a retreat with me. And it's like every time I brought something up, you know, like you can change this, you know, this is shadow, that this was actually before I knew shadow alchemy. But it's like, I knew enough, right? It's like even without shadow alchemy, it's like, I knew that she was so trapped in being a victim of what happened when she was a child. It was like every time I brought something up that you can change this now, she got, but this happened to me when I was a child. And because this happened to me as a child, I can't do that. And I know other people who are so, you know, they glorify, there's like the whole identity becomes about all the bad things that happen, all the trauma they experience, you know, how horrible the past family was. And so the whole, you know, new age spirituality, the modern spirituality is so much about rescuing people, right? The whole charities, because they can't possibly do it themselves. And you see it, you know, you see it everywhere around the world. So, you know, call it codependence, it's everywhere. But this is compassion, you know, and empathy. It's like, yeah, I understand you don't have any money to pay this program. You know, it's like, I feel so sorry for you, maybe on a later date, rather than calling them out on, you're not a victim of how much money you have. You have the power to go out and like create money. If you really wanted money, you're going to go and create it. And the people who are winners in life, you know, the people who are really winners in life, they make things happen. And I've talked about this, you know, in elsewhere. It's like, when it comes to money, right? It's like, just because you don't have it sitting as cash in your bank account right now doesn't mean you can't manifest it. You can go out and ask people for a loan. You can, you know, take a bank loan. It's like you can ask somebody, you know, to sponsor you or invest in your business, or, you know, there's so many different ways of it. It's like sell your car or whatever. But because it's like, I don't have the cash sitting in my bank account, you immediately fall into the victim consciousness of, I don't have the power to generate the cash, right? It's like there's such blindness in it. Like we're so stuck in this victim consciousness that we can't see the truth, that we still have the power to create what we want to have happen. So what we're talking, you know, and the other part is like the compassion and the empathy. Is like compassion is really just, it's like, oh, I feel so sorry for you being such a victim. Let me help you so that you feel better about being in your victim consciousness, rather than kicking the ass out of the victim consciousness, right? Because when you think about God, God is not powerless. God doesn't have any problem creating what it wants. You know, God, he, she, it. God doesn't have any problem creating anything it wants. It's God just wants and then makes it happen. There's no hesitancy. There's no need for anybody. Like, God doesn't ask for approval. Doesn't ask, you know, God doesn't want what, you know, wonder what will other people think about me. And, you know, the other part of the whole faux spirituality is like, be like everybody else. As a, I don't know, if like, if I'm just like everybody else, everybody will see how spiritual I am because I'm just like, you know, the agreed upon spirituality. So people will approve of me, right? It's like there's shadow codes in it. Like that God would never give a fuck about anybody approving about what God wants to do. God just does. God says, this is what I want. Done, created, right? This is who we need to become. This is what I want. I'm going to make it happen. Not even a question of whether I have the power. It doesn't even exist, right, in the mind of God, if God has a mind. Just Done. It exists. Right? Spirituality is be like God, not be like Jesus. Jesus, who sacrificed himself to rescue everybody else from the misery, right? It's like be like God. Be like a creator of your life. This is what I want. I'm going to make it happen. Boom, it's there. So the light spirituality is what has been the prevailing spirituality on earth, and it's coming to an end. It's done, right? It's done. So hanging on to it is going to be hard. So the light spirituality exists on a spectrum. You can have less light and more light. So in this little light, we call it shadow. Light is truth, right? The light of God, the light of the spirit, enlightenment, truth. Shadow, with the absence of truth, of the absence of light, there is an absence of truth. And what do you get when you have an absence of truth? You get a lie, right? So light is truth. And the shadow is distorted truth. So it has become a lie. So let me just see here. So we know here that light is not the ultimate spiritual truth, because you have the dark consciousness, which is light is light. But to get yourself out of this faux spirituality and get you truly into your power over your life, your power as a creator, you know, we use the truth of the light archetypes. We use the truth of the light, where you decide, not even a question whether you have the power to create it, and you create it, you manifest it, just like that. Simple as that. That's who you are meant to be. There's just no shadow. So if you go in and look at the whole light spirituality that exists on the spectrum from shadow to light, it's like these are the prevailing codes in our body and our consciousness. Let's forget about the body right now, focus on our consciousness. So our consciousness is like, has an operating system. And the operating system in our consciousness determines everything we feel, everything we think, everything we believe. It determines our actions and what we create with these actions, and it determines our energy. And when we are God, right? Again, spirituality is be like God. God turns energy into matter, right? This is what God does, right? When God creates, God turns energy into matter. Might do other things also, but for our purpose, when it comes to money and wealth, God turns energy into matter. That's what we are supposed to do also. Turning energy into matter. And this is true spirituality, right? It's like not the false spirituality that caters to the victim consciousness, the prevailing survival victim consciousness, like, oh, poor me, I don't have the power, I need somebody to come and rescue me, to make my life better and tell me I'm doing okay and approve of me. That's a lie. That's not spirituality. The spirituality is like, I have the same power as God to turn energy into matter. So with the operating system, right? It's like this is, you need to uninstall, like delete, erase the operating system in your brain that is the prevailing survival geared spirituality that's all based on the lie that you're powerless, like the victim consciousness, the survival consciousness, that it's better to be poor. That needs to be deleted from your brain, from your consciousness, right? Because it's going to sit there. And if it's not deleted at its coding level, you're going to keep doing it. Because it's like what you really want. You want an operating system in your brain, in your consciousness, that is geared towards thriving. And you can't just overlay it on the survival consciousness, that's, you know, the shadow consciousness that is already in your consciousness, that your consciousness was coded with, from past lives, from ancestral heritage, from your childhood, whatever. It's like that's kind of your base coding. You need to delete that base shadow coding, of the false faux spirituality, and install the truth codes of true spiritualities, like be like God. Those are the ones you want. And we call them, they become very, very clear to see when you start working with the archetypes. We have the archetype pillar, if you think about each pillar going from very, absence of light to the brightest light, to pure light, the absence of light to pure light, from shadow to light is what we call them. Fear, power, survival, thriving. There's one that's focused on desire and value. It's a prostitute lover channel. The prostitute is the shadow one, is the coded one that thinks that you need other people's approval in order to be able to survive, right? No, it's these things sit so deep in us. Whereas the lover says, it's like, I decide for my life, I decide what I want, and I'm going to make it happen. And I don't actually care if other people are going to approve of it, no matter what. Another one is the child sovereign channel, where the child dreams and manipulates to have things being given, but never really takes responsibility. It never goes beyond the dream and waiting for things to be handed on a silver platter. And, I've been there, I've done the work. I am doing the work. I've done the work. Another one is the victim warrior channel, right? The victim consciousness. I'm powerless, so I can't make things happen. I'm helpless. So I'm for myself. So I'm going to focus on other people who have greater problems than me and rescue them so that I can feel better about myself, right? So I can get approval that way. Whereas the warrior just said, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to make happen. And the most beautiful one is the magician, which is where you really get into like touching God levels of reality, because the magician is the saboteur. The magician channel is, the saboteur is all about the logic and the reasonable and the reasonableness and knowing the numbers and having it be perfect. It's very dry, very logical. But there's another part, right, where we want the magic, which is where we get the intuition. And this is where we talk about the magician archetype, which is your higher self. It's your God self, actually, like your spirit, I don't want to say spirit matter, but it is where, when you really get into the spiritual truth of the light, with all the power that implies your ability to turn energy into matter, to be completely and utterly create every single aspect of your life. It's like really, really, really become the only creator of your life. And that is possible, right? Be like God. You're the only creator of your life. You get access to the timeline, like the future, and you get access to the non-logical wisdom, right? You just know what you know, you get the intuitive hits. And these are really, really important because they are so pure. There's no shadow in your intuition. If there's shadow around, it is not your intuition. And this is also so important. So intuition is pure God self-speak. And the intuition is, what did I write here? When it comes to making money, it's like you gotta move out of shadow. And until, the way out is like always, alchemize the shadow into the light archetypes so that you can hear your intuition and it will tell you exactly what to do in order to, manifest whatever you want. Because God, be like God, is spirituality. It's like, what do you want to manifest? When you're shadow free, you will know exactly what to do at any given moment, whether it's doing a live stream, whether it's like a certain piece of marketing, whether it's reaching out to somebody else, whether it's sales, whether it's like having people come to you, whether it's I need to go and buy myself some flowers, which that action is going to activate somebody who has just been on your Facebook and, you know, read a few posts, and they're like, these flowers you're going to buy for just because intuition told you to go and buy them, it's going to activate that person who then comes in and becomes your client, right? It's like, you don't know, right? And this is the limitation of your human brain. It's like, you don't know what is going to activate somebody to become your client. And because you can't know that, you can't figure it out. So you only have your trust in your intuition, because this is trust in your own God self. And if you follow intuition blindly, you're going to be able to turn energy into matter, but it's not going to be logical, right? Because God is not logical. You know, it's like logic is a human thing. It's no magic. It's like when you go into, you know, be like God, like that stage, it's a magical place to live. And even then more so when you know, go beyond the light into the dark, which is the lightest light. So, yeah. So this, of course, is where shadow alchemy comes in. And it wasn't really going to be a live stream about shadow alchemy, but shadow alchemy is like the only method that can really delete the shadow codes in your psyche, in your consciousness, in your body, and alchemize them, actually turn them into light. It's like shadow is distorted light, so it like cleanses the codes of shadow. And then you begin to realize, yes, you know, this is who I am. I have all this power. And, you know, the power is already there, right? I mean, it's not like you have to go and find it, you know, from outside, because that's, again, it's like one of these myths about spirituality. Nobody outside of you has more power over you than you do. You have all the power over every single aspect of your life, including how much money you have, including how much wealth you have, including what your business is. It's all yours already. But shadow codes makes it really hard to pull that power up. So if you look at wealth, right, it's you know, wealth, money, you know, let's just go with money as an aspect of wealth, as a symbol of wealth. It's not the only one, but it's one. God is at the heart creator, right? God creates. And if you look at just at the universe, right, there's not just one galaxy. There's like an infinite number of galaxies. There's not just 100 stars in each galaxy. There's like billions of stars in a galaxy, right? And then just bring it down here to planet Earth. It's like, there's not just one kind of grass. There's like millions of kind of grasses. There's not just one kind of birds. There's like millions of kind of birds, right? It's like, just imagine that sheer creative exuberance that God, you know, shows you. And you're exactly like this, right? You have that same creative power. And when we talk about the light archetypes and the truth, right, this is what the warrior is, the creative will, the creative will. So God is definitely not one for lack. God is like have enough of everything, right? A million kinds of grass, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of straws of grass on this planet. There's no lack, right? God, there's no lack. So be like God means have no lack of anything you desire in your life. And this is where you again have to look back to the old spiritual traditions, right? Because life, you know, because they came from such a long time ago when poor was the norm, you know, subsistence level existence was the norm. It's like people couldn't even conceive of more than just surviving. So they had to learn to accept that this was all they were ever going to have, because that was just the life. I mean, you know, of course they could go out and make things happen, but most of the people at that time, they were just stuck, you know, with subsistence farming. I mean, you know, it's just coming to mind. Like I have some friends in Iceland where I used to live, whose parents were subsistence farming. It's not that long time ago, you know, that really began to change from real. But it also means that spiritual teachings, you know, what tells you to accept where you're at and be happy with what you have and not ask for more. It's like throw that out of the window. Ask for everything. This is your fucking life. Ask for everything. Why should you hold back? It's like, be like God. Why should you hold back on anything? Where do you get this idea from, right? Why should you not ask for more? Why should you not ask for everything you want when you know that you have the power to create it? So coming back, you know, it's like God, lack is not part of God, right? It's like lack is part of, you know, the survivor consciousness, the victim consciousness. We already know that that's not the spiritual truth. So if you want to be spiritual, you throw that out of the window and you come into yourself and your body and you alchemize the shit out of these shadows, because that's the only thing that's holding you back actually from being like God. So any kind of struggle, any kind of lack, whether it's like lack of money, struggle with high, you know, self-esteem, it's like lack of confidence, or, you know, struggle finding good ideas to market, you know, your business. It's like, this is all kind of, it's all a lie. You will never, lack of any kind is a lie. It's an illusion, because it's based on the whole, you know, the whole victim consciousness, you know, shadow. It is not truth. But the point is, like we have been taught it's truth, right? It's like been through all history, and it feels like truth. And this is where the hook is, right? It feels like truth. And you can't take a magical pill for this, you know, this is not the Matrix. There's no blue pill and red pill. You have to do the really, really hard work. And I know that, Monique, you're coming into the Shadow Alchemy Mastermind because you're determined to do this, right? And I'm determined to do this too. And I'm doing it, and I've been doing it for years, right? It's like, you can't skim the surface of this work of installing, you know, like deleting the shadow codes in your consciousness. It takes work, you know, and to become God, to become a wealthy mystic at any times. So money overflow is, once you come in to be like God, right? It's like, you want it, you have all the power to create whatever you want, and you're just not going to stop, because why shouldn't you want more and more and more? When is enough enough? Enough is never enough. Because why would you ever stop creating? This is the fun part of being life. It's a creating thing, right? I want this, it's created, now I have it. You know, I've often shown my bed here, you know, you can see it, right? I created that bed, you know, I created the money for paying for it. I created, you know, getting it shipped from England, getting it handmade in England, getting it here. And now I had it. It's like, yes, I created this bed myself. What else can I create? Why should I ever stop? Why should I ever say enough is enough? When the fun is in what else can I create? How much like God can I be? I want to be a wealthy mystic, you know, a millionaire mystic. There was a reason why this is the name of my Facebook group. As a recycled name. There's something about this, like really learning the truth of how much money, how much power you actually have to make money and create the life you want. It's like, as a spiritual path that really, really matters to me. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So once you come into, you know, the true light, the truth of the light, which is the way that just points the way out of shadow. It's not the stopping point, but it's your compass. It's direction out of shadow. It's money becomes a beautiful side effect. And money overflow becomes a beautiful side effect. It stops being like, oh, I try so hard to make money and I have to figure out how to make money. and you're calculating the numbers in the back of your mind. It's like, will I have enough if I pay this bill or whatever? You've been there, you know exactly how it goes. It's rather than, you know, like just own it, you know, own it. It's like, if you want to be a millionaire mystic, make yourself a millionaire mystic. You can totally do it. And so can I. Okay, that was a lot of talking. But this is really the age of the wealthy mystic, where the light grid is going down, the light spirituality, which is what I have done here, you know, my part in dismantling. It's outdated. It is truly, its time is up. And we can't hold on to the whole ideas of spirituality and money that has been traveling, you know, through human history, and that has, you know, brainwashed us, or this has been our default state of being. Like, true spirituality is to be like God. And it's time we become like God, which is really what the dark consciousness is about. But first you have to get out of shadow. First you have to deal with your shadow. You have to unhook yourself from the, you know, the tyranny, the stranglehold, the, you know, get out of the prison of shadow. And that takes a lot of work. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, and it's so worth it, especially because it brings so lovely money with it. Okay, so those of you who are not already in the Shadow Alchemy Mastermind, which is where we go full force into this. I mean, it's like really putting full force into this. 3 months, going all the way into this. It's like, this is where it starts. You have like today or tomorrow to sign up, I think. And that's it. That's it. It's over. And then you have to wait several months. I think next time it starts in April. So do this. And if you absolutely cannot find in any way, shape, or form the money to join it, come into the Shadow Alchemy membership, where I will help you do your Shadow Alchemy. That's only $250 a month, so you can totally afford that. But the Shadow Alchemy Mastermind is the deep, really deep work where you really, you know, unhook yourself from the shadow. So I know I'll see you in there, Monique. Hopefully I will see the rest of you in there also, if, you know, move heaven and earth to make it happen. That's what I would do. That's what I did myself when I did my Shadow Alchemy. It's like, I was the same price. I was even more, I think. It was like, did I pay $7,500 also for it? I think I did. It was like, I have no idea how I came up with the money for it, but I did, because there was no way I was not going to participate in that. So up to you guys. Okay, see you around.